All right, so welcome in, Maize and Blue Review. Dennis Fithian with you here, live weekdays at 1 o'clock, talking about the latest in Michigan sports. And it's great to have on one of the heavyweights in the business, and it's Phil Steele, the football analyst who's widely popular. Phil Steele, college football preview is available now. Phil, how are you?
I am doing great, Dennis. How about yourself today?
Man, I'm doing pretty good. The watching a little the British Open and getting ready for some college football. Thinking about talking to you. I got to tell you, you were a part of a discussion today because I was sitting at my computer and I had put your online version in the cart and I was right there in the checkout. My wife just happened to be walking by, and she said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well, I'm ordering Phil Steele." And she said, "You always buy the print version, the hard copy. You have them on your desk, sometimes 10 deep." And I said, "Yeah, well, this year I'm thinking about, going online." She said, "I'm going to the bookstore later." And, if she wouldn't have walked by, it would have been, a new me, going to the online version, but I'm staying with the print.
Awesome. I'm old school like that as well. I like the print version better. You can mark it up. You can make notes on it and keep it all season long. But I will tell you this, Dennis, if you do go also getting the digital version gets updated all the way through the start of the season. So if a player is gone, or even a coach like Bill Clark at UAB is gone, that's updated in the digital version, which wouldn't be in the hard copy. But the hard copy, at least you can mark it up and it gets all dog-eared by the end of the year.
Oh, like something like with the Big 10, the Big 12 coaches meetings that are going on right now. I noticed that Baylor decided that one of their quarterbacks that, they already made a decision on who they were going with. So you can update that on the online version. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, we actually captured that in the magazine that they went with one QB. Bohannon transferred out after they gave the job. But luckily, we come out later in the press publication than all the other magazines do. We come out June the 8th. So we were able to capture that Blake Shapen was the starter and that Gary Bohannon had transferred out. In fact, he transferred to USF, and we got that in the magazine as well.
Look at that. Well, Phil, a lot of Michigan fans. It's amazing. You've got all these teams covered, everything else, and I'm the same way. I spend 90% of my time looking at what you have to say about the Big Ten, although, there's everything else that's in there. And then 70% of the time, I just stay on the Michigan page. So I want to know what you think of Michigan this year.
Well, last year I had them on my most improved list, but got to be honest with you, they did better than I expected last year. They did last year pretty much what I had expected back in 1990 or 2019 when I had called for them to win the Big Ten, and they really disappointed me. Last year they didn't disappoint. They did everything they did, including blowing out Ohio State in the 42-27 win, and then of course blowing out Iowa in the Big Ten title game. It's a very good Michigan team again. I don't think the defense is quite up to last year's standards. They lose quite a few players: Aiden Hutchinson, Ajabo, Hinton, Ross, Hill, Hawkins, Gray, all out the door for Michigan on defense. But I still rate them the number 25 D-line, number 36 linebackers, and number 20 DB. So still a top 25 defense this year. Their strengths: offensive line, won the Joe Moore Award last year. I've got them the number one offensive line again coming into the year. Special teams, number one special teams last year. I got them the number one special teams again this year. And they've got two very capable quarterbacks in Cade McNamara and J.J. McCarthy. Whoever ends up winning the starting job, and right now it looks like it's going to be McNamara, but they're going to do outstanding. They've got tremendous receiving core. This is a very good Michigan team. I actually have Michigan favored in their first 11 games this year. I've got them going 11-0 when they travel to face Ohio State on the road on November 26th.
Wow, 11-0. Phil, there's no formula for this. You've seen over your, close to 30 years, the publication coming out that many times over the years. You've seen quarterback competitions play out and quarterback rotations. I don't really like quarterback rotations myself. We saw a little bit of McCarthy last year. I think we're going to see a little bit more of him this year. How do you think this plays out for Jim Harbaugh and company?
Yeah, it's a delicate balance nowadays with the transfer portal. It seems like every time one quarterback's named a full-fledged starter, the backup ends up leaving and going someplace else. But I think McNamara really proved himself. And when you look at McCarthy, he is a guy that's bigger. He's got the stronger arm. He's more mobile. He's got everything you want. But Cade McNamara just flat out proved it last year what a winner he was with a great season, hitting 64%. And Michigan doesn't require its quarterback to throw for 4,000 yards or 30 touchdowns a year to be successful. They've got that run game to rely on, but a very good quarterback running the offense and got them all the way into the playoff last year. So how do you go against a guy like that? And then you got that guy, J.J. McCarthy, sitting behind him, who's quite an interesting option, maybe a little bit more talented.
Well, we know we had yesterday someone message us, and they had your magazine, and they told us that they thought or that you'd predicted Ohio State and Alabama to be in the championship game. We know you've already said Michigan goes 11-0. How do you think that Big Ten East plays out then? Ohio State there, Michigan there, number 2. How about Penn State, Michigan State over there in the Big Ten East? How do you think that plays out?
Yeah, I've got Ohio State winning the Big Ten East and winning the Big Ten overall this year. In fact, I think one of your better wagers out there in preseason is Ohio State over 10.5 wins. Last year was an unusual year. We had Ohio State not in the Big Ten title game, Clemson not in the ACC title game, Oklahoma not in the Big 12 title game. Heck, Alabama lost to Texas A&M, barely got past Florida, barely got past LSU, and should have lost to Auburn. They needed a miracle comeback just to get that. And the reason for that was it seemed most of the teams in the country had 17, 18, 19 returning starters. Michigan, for example, 17 returning starters last year, and that was because of COVID. Not a lot of players left, a lot of returned. In fact, most of the head coaches I talked to said, hey, Phil, it's the deepest we've ever been in the spring. We could run 3 teams in spring practice. I've never been able to do that before. The teams that didn't were teams like Ohio State, which only had 11 returning starters, Alabama, Clemson, Oklahoma, and those teams struggle. But this year, the playing field evens out. Ohio State this year has got 14 returning starters. Michigan actually only has 13 returning starters. So I think we're going to see a return to the powers, and that's why I've got Ohio State running the table this year. But elsewhere in the Big East or Big Ten East, Penn State is a team that has had 2 down years. Now, last year might have turned out different. Remember, they were 5-0. They're beating Iowa, which was number 3 in the country on the road. Penn State was number 4 in the country. And then Sean Clifford gets injured. They end up losing that game. Clifford wasn't 100%. They lost to Illinois. They gave a good effort to Ohio State, but waffled down the stretch. They lost a close one to Michigan, lost a close one to Michigan State, and fell all the way down to 7-6 at the end of the year. I think they are a team that can get that number 3 spot in the East. And then in the 4th spot, I've got Michigan State. Everything went right for Michigan State last year. This is a team that was minus 53 yards per game in Big Ten play, yet finished with only 1 loss in Big Ten, or 2 losses in Big Ten play. So I think when you look at Michigan State this year, they're strong again. I like their quarterback in Peyton Thorne. I like I think the defense has to be improved, especially that secondary. And they've got a dangerous receiver in Jaden Reed. But I've got Michigan State with a tough schedule coming in 4th in the Big Ten East.
We have Phil Steele on the line, the football analyst. The Phil Steele College Football Preview is available now. Phil, before I ask you, you mentioned most improved team, Michigan last year. You had them tabbed. Before I ask you that surprise team nationally or most improved team that you have, I wanted to circle back on Michigan for one more question. Jim Harbaugh in the program, we know that Harbaugh, after winning the Big Ten this year, he had that interview with the Vikings. Some people, especially rivals, are using that against Harbaugh, that he's got his eye on the NFL. How's the program and how's Harbaugh viewed nationally by somebody like you?
I think a lot better now that he's finally got to the playoff and won the Big Ten. And I think overall the whole thing with the NFL went well because from all reports, Harbaugh told recruits prior to interviewing with the NFL that he was going to interview. He told all the players he was going to interview with the NFL, and he did. And now he's telling players that he's not going to do that anymore. And he definitely brought some credibility with the fact that he told them in advance that he was going to do that. So I think overall, Harbaugh comes out of this looking pretty good, and definitely a lot better off than he was heading into last season when he was coming off a 2-4 year and had to take a pay cut. So I think Jim Harbaugh came out pretty well this year.
You are right about that. All right, Phil, the surprise team. You do a really good job. You mentioned you like that over for Ohio State. I like the over Michigan 9.5. So I don't know if I could ever put money down on Ohio State, but I see where you're coming from there. How about a team this year that you look at that might be in the category as a surprise or most improved team?
Yeah, I'm going to give you. I'll give you two surprise teams and then one most improved team. And the first surprise team I want to talk about is Utah. Utah, of course, played Ohio State in the Rose Bowl and gave them quite a game. Probably should have won that. Utah's even a better team this year. They're strong at the line of scrimmage every year under Kyle Whittingham. And then they've got Cam Rising back at quarterback, a deep backfield, a dangerous receiving core. I think when you look at the schedule for Utah this year, I've got them favored in every game. I've got one toss-up game at Oregon. But I see them winning the Pac-12 and having a shot at making the playoff this year. I mean, an undefeated Pac-12 team would get there. They have their toughest test, USC, at home, and I think that's big for Utah. Another team to talk about is Pitt. And everybody's throwing Pitt in the dumpster because they lost Kenny Pickett, and then they lost Jordan Addison, their star wide receiver. But I like the replacement at quarterback in Keaton Slovis. He's a guy that comes over from USC, was a Heisman front runner into this year last season. They got dangerous running backs, a much improved offensive line. Defensively is where they make their hay. They've got one of the best defensive lines in the country every year. And Narduzzi does it when he loses 3 starters on the D-line. He all of a sudden ends up with 3 new stars. Guess what? He's got practically everybody back on the D-line this year. Second best D-line in the country. Dangerous defense, and they know how to win on the road. Last year they went 4-0 on the ACC road, winning by 23.5 points per game. I think it's possible. Pitt's 11-0 when they travel to face Miami of Florida in the final week of the season. So they are number one surprise team, or a team that won't be in the top 10 that I think has a shot at making the playoff. And then most improved teams, and you should enjoy this, Dennis. In my process of the magazine, I go through a 3 write-through process. The first write-through is a postseason write-through where I read every article is written about the team, really get in tune with each position and how they fared on the year. And then I write, okay, what kind of shape were they heading in last year? What happened? And now what kind of shape are they for this year? Well, when I did the first write-through process, I had USD middle of the pack in the Pac-12 South, coming off a 4-8 season, only 11 returning starters, new head coach, had to learn the players. But by the time I talked to Lincoln Riley on the third write-through process, which is after we talked to the coaches, he had signed Caleb Williams from Oklahoma as quarterback. Wide receiver Mario Williams, my number 2 rated wide receiver out of high school, was from Oklahoma, signs there. Jordan Addison, the Biletnikoff winner, signs there. 1,000-yard rusher Travis Dye, signs there. Shane Lee started 13 games for Alabama in 2019 at linebacker, signs there. He brought in a ton of recruits, and now all of a sudden, USC went from 4-8 to my number 1 most improved team in the country. I think they can get to double-digit wins this year, and if Utah is going to have a main contender in the Pac-12, I think it's USC. So those would be three teams to look at this year.
I am convinced. Phil, before I let you go, I know you do a lot on the pro side as well. I always talk college football with you, but, for the Lions, they're going to be looking for a quarterback coming up. And Bryce Young and C.J. Stroud, who do you think is the better college quarterback? Who do you think ultimately will be the better pro? I don't know if it's the same answer.
Right now, the NFL scouts have Bryce Young 1, C.J. Stroud 2, and then how about Tyler Van Dyke from Miami? Watch him play this year. He's 6'4", 224. He can hurt you running and also throwing. I think he might be a sneaky guy that emerges up the ladder. So watch Tyler Van Dyke, Miami of Florida.
Well, we're familiar with the offensive coordinator there in Josh Gaddis, who was at Michigan last year. So we will keep an eye on the Canes, and they're doing a lot with name, image, and likeness and everything else. Phil, you're always doing a lot. We appreciate your time. We know you're so busy. I'll be out there later on today. Well, actually, my wife will be. She'll be picking up the magazine, and I'll be cracking that thing open late into the night.
Sounds good, Dennis. And let the wife know, Barnes & Noble is the only place to get the magazine right now. We actually had to print the magazine in 2 runs. Yeah, we had to print it in 2 runs this year, because of a paper shortage. So the first run went strictly to Barnes & Noble. So save the gas money. Don't drive around looking for it. Just go to Barnes & Noble right now to pick up the magazine.
Well, that is some great advice because that is not where she was going. So nice job on that, Phil. Have a great rest of the day. Enjoy the college football season. I go all the way back to the black and white days. So it's always great to be able to talk with you, and enjoy the rest of your summer.
I appreciate you having me on all these years, Dennis. Like you said, I remember when you had my magazine on, when it was in the black and white version way back in the 1990s. And thank you once again for having me on today.
All right. Take care, Phil.
All right. Bye.
There he is. Phil Steele. Phil Steele, College Football Magazine. And I didn't realize, I thought that, they keep coming out quicker and quicker, those college football magazines. I'm ready for college football all the time. We sit here talking about college football every day, specifically Michigan every day. And somebody asked me, well, do you get tired of talking about Michigan? And I said, I haven't. I've never occurred to me that I would be tired of talking about Michigan. Sometimes I think other people, especially when I was doing radio in Detroit, and it's, oh, you're going to talk about Michigan again. Well, it's, you see, it was a different animal. You'd have to look for some kind of topic that you thought maybe that people that were non-Michigan fans would be interested in. But this is the Maize and Blue Review. People are interested in Michigan, and it's been a really how do you say newsy? It's been an entertaining year. We started out and launched on November 1st, as it would happen. That was the weekend that Michigan played Michigan State. So it was, you'd rather be coming on after a win. We were all thinking like, man, Michigan wins that game. We're going to hit the air. We're going to hit the print. We're going to be on Maize and Blue Review. We're going to come out and it's going to be great. And then they lost to Michigan State, but then they didn't lose the game when we were taking over the control. So we thought, oh, okay. And, making it to the college football playoff. And, it's since then, would it have been different if Michigan didn't play in the Big Ten championship game and win it? Would have been different if they didn't go to the college football playoff playing on New Year's Eve. I think it would have been a little bit different, maybe more basketball coverage, maybe more hockey coverage. But then, you get hockey and baseball and, of course, basketball as well. Michigan perked up there late and then, had the two nice games in the NCAA tournament. And then Harbaugh, I don't know how long that went. I'd have to go back and look. I'm talking about Harbaugh from the end of the season and then the deal with the Vikings till it was over. But it seemed like it went on for about a month. And every day, it's pretty easy. You take a couple topics, and you get in there, you start talking about them. And I thought, every day I was interested in talking about and had a different thought or opinion on Harbaugh. And there was just one day where here I was talking about it again, like, this is what's going on. Maybe he's gone, maybe he's not. I thought, maybe I'm getting a little tired of talking about Jim Harbaugh and the Vikings. One day. And then I think that day, I talked about something else. But other than that, and you always look in the old days, I feel like, before the pandemic, you'd get to June, certainly July, maybe August, you call those the dog days and sports talk, but it's been nothing like that. And college football has a lot to do with it. It's been center stage, college football with everything, with the name, image, and likeness, which I have not been tired of talking about that. It's so many twists and turns. Seems like every day. If you're somebody now that's with us on Maize and Blue Review on the Wolverine Den, there's always a story. There's always some kind of collective or, something that somebody's putting together, an idea about how this thing is working. This week it was, Phil Steele mentioned the wide receiver from Pitt, Reed Addison, that went over to, or Addison Reed that went over to USC. And, he was promised the report was, and there was a, report, putting some air quotes around that USC was offering like I think it was $3.5 million. And then, he wasn't even in the transfer portal, but then lo and behold, he was in the transfer portal. And then he did end up going to USC. And I was like, well, there you go. Look at that. That was tampering. That was $3.5 million. That was promises of money. And that was all of it. And then just this week, somebody, I don't know, did they talk to him, or it was again another report that the wide receiver was unhappy because maybe he wasn't getting what he was promised from the Trojans. And that would be something. Like if USC was out there saying, yeah, we'll promise you $3 million. Player comes in, signs, and then they're like, well, we kind of fell apart. The $3.5 million we met if you won the Biletnikoff again, if we won the championship, then, and you might have been like, what? I don't know. I'm just making all that part up. And, you would think, a kid can't come out and say, I was promised. Well, then it actually, you might as well just call up the NCAA. It's really easy. It seems to fly under the radar of the NCAA these days. No, somebody calls you up and say, were you promised $1 million to go to Huckenbuck State? And you say, no, I was not promised. Well, there were reports out there. They were. You're like, I didn't have those reports. No, I was not promised anything. I just went there. Okay. And they hang up the phone. But if you're the wide receiver and you come out and say, I was promised 3.5 and they only gave me $1 million. Well, there you go. Even the NCAA that's sitting back there and letting all this go at that point, I think would jump in. So that was one of the stories with name, image, and likeness this week. We were on yesterday during the show. We had breaking news. And that breaking news is that Michigan received their 11th verbal commitment. I want to notify everyone out there, if wherever you may be watching or listening to this show, if you're watching it live at 1:22 and you want to put a message out and put your feedback, we hit it and we talk about it and discuss what is on your mind with Michigan as it comes in. We do that. We enjoy doing that. We like to interact with the people. That's what we're doing here. But during the show yesterday, you got the news that Michigan got their 11th verbal commitment, a defensive end out of Colleyville, Texas, 4-star, and his name is Enow Etta. Enow Etta. Enow Etta is looks like a great prospect. He really does. And so Michigan, I don't know if I'm leading the charge, but I was out there, looking at the recruiting ranking that was, above 50 not so long ago and thinking, Michigan, with how things are going with name, image, and likeness, I didn't say there was no way, but I didn't think that they would get into the top 25. Last year, here they were at number 8 because of their approach and their messaging with name, image, and likeness. Now, they're not in the top 25, but the last two commitments, number 10 and number 11 here, you have Etta, and then you had on the other side Collins.
A champion.
That's how he says his name. Collins.
A champion.
So you have two defensive ends that are coming in, and when you have guys at the same position, they're going to be compared. When you have Aiden Hutchinson going number 2 overall in the draft, you have David Ajabo going into the second round. He would have been a first rounder if he didn't get hurt. And not that these guys are the heir apparent and they're going to come in and replace those two, but you just think about what they did last year and what kind of effect it would have on guys that play that position. And these two in Collins
a champion
and also Enow Etta. These guys are linked, which is pretty cool. And it also has Michigan moving up the rankings. Let's go, speaking of those rankings, let's look at them. We have on the screen Rivals 2023 team rankings. And let's see here. That's not what I wanted. If we can page down, we can. For a second, I didn't think we could, but we can. Let's page down quick because you have Ohio State number 1. Ohio State's number 1 right now. This is live and refreshed and updated. This is how the recruiting rankings, team recruiting rankings look right now. Buckeyes 1, there's Notre Dame. Number 2, Texas, Clemson, Tennessee. I'm not going to list every single one. Just some highlights there. Penn State is at 8. Surprising, Texas Tech just threw a bunch of money into their facilities. What, $200 million? Cincy, Northwestern, and Iowa, 14 and 15. That's pretty high. You think about for their teams. These things are going to change. I mean, Louisville being 18, they're off to a good start, but Alabama and USC, I would bet, would be closer to number one than they would be to 20. In fact, I would think that both of those teams would be in the top 5 when it's all said and done. Spartans sitting there at 22. Purdue at 23. Still no Michigan. Minnesota, Nebraska. You look at the number of commitments, that can really help you in these rankings. We know it's still, 7 months until National Signing Day. Maybe 6 months to the early signing period when everybody's in there anyways. But here's Michigan at 36 now with 11 verbals with their last 2 defensive ends, and that is up from 50. So there's nothing to have any kind of recruiting party, but also not sitting back there at 50 and maybe a chance to get into that top 25. And who knows, as we talk about almost every day with name, image, and likeness and how things are going, maybe Michigan will spring some things. And because we saw how it played out last year, we're just getting into name, image, and likeness of these collectives. I didn't know if somebody would have said, what about the collectives at this time last year? I'd have said, I don't know, what's a collective? But I know what a collective is now. And Michigan has got a couple, and it's like they've got more coming. And so were they late to the party? I think so. They were letting this play out a little bit and breathe. And, they had their approach, which they, were criticized for. And, I was there being critical of it as well. Let's see if they're going to be in the mix to be able to flip some people and, how this thing plays out. As always, we're going to see how it plays out, but maybe it won't be as bad as some people, myself included, were thinking just of last year, or just last month. Sorry, maybe even a couple of weeks ago. Okay, I've mentioned Maize and Blue Review a few times. I've also mentioned the Den, the posting board that is on Maize and Blue Review. If you did not see this, Josh Henschke, our publisher, put out this tweet recently saying that you can get access to premium content for free until the season opener. That is free. Use the code UFMFree22 at checkout. Just go to michigan.rivals.com. Join the Maize and Blue Review. Use UFMFree22 at checkout and say, it would be really nice. Say, I was watching the podcast, the digital podcast, and I decided to get on, and I've never been part of a posting board community before, but I'm going to try it out for the next 2 months. What do we got, 50 some odd days until the opener? It's a long time to be sitting around talking about Michigan, getting the latest, all the stories, the inside news, and everything else. And check it out, and I'll see you there. Coming up tomorrow, it's been, I would say, we've been on a run, maybe of 2-3 weeks straight of just football talk. Coming up tomorrow, we're going to get to some basketball discussion. We're going to bring in one of our newest members of the Maize and Blue Review. Before I leave, I see OM has pitched in with some feedback, and let's see what he has to say. Here's OM. What's your thought on both J.J. McCarthy and Cade McNamara throwing for 1,000 yards each? I would think that would be unlikely, OM. I don't think this is going to be a true 50-50 split. I don't think it's going to be a 60-40 split. You can have your idea, and I don't need to go all, through the different ways, that they can compete for the starting job and how the playing time will go. I'll say it like this. I do think that I would put my money on Cade McNamara starting the season. I do think that you have a luxury with Colorado State, Hawaii, UConn, and Maryland where you can maybe in those games, let's say maybe you can, if you want, get a 50-50 split in there. I don't think you're going to get a 50-50 split. Coaches don't do that. I want them to compete in those games. I want each guy to get an opportunity to show what he can do against another team. But the one thing that you know about football is that even now, when they're out there in summer drills and summer conditioning and throwing the receivers, they're going to be evaluated each and every rep, how they know the offense, everything that goes into that. Fall camp, how they divvy up those snaps, when they have to focus on, we're going to give the starter, 80% of the reps, however they do that. But each and every repetition at that point is still going to be analyzed until they go into the season. And I just don't think you're going to get anywhere close to a 50-50 split. I think the money slightly would be on McNamara to start the season. It wouldn't be impossible to think that J.J. McCarthy could unseat him in fall camp. That could happen. Like, he's just lights out, and you could cook up your own scenario. But I would put the guess as the starter right now on McNamara. But then I think that it's pretty close to a toss-up by the time they get to Iowa on who would be the quarterback. So if you're somebody that thinks, J.J. McCarthy, it's just a matter of time, and you think that he'll be playing against Iowa, maybe. The one thing about it, and you heard Phil Steele predict that Michigan's going to go 11-0 heading into that game against Ohio State at Ohio State on November the 25th this year. And he has them losing that game. I would say that, that's a real, you take that right now, not a loss to Ohio State, but you definitely take that 11-0. If they do go 11-0, and even if you do predict Michigan to lose that game heading into the season, then you're not going to predict that heading into the Ohio State game. And if you're winning, if Cade comes out and is playing reasonably well against Colorado State, Hawaii, UConn, Maryland, and Michigan keeps winning, and they're sprinkling in McCarthy, I mean, it's a tough job, but job one is to try to win all of the games this season. Fooling around with flip-flopping quarterbacks, and you got to be careful there. You have a shot, a decent shot, however you want to look at it, at getting to 11-0. And so could I see a scenario? Would I rather have Michigan? I think you should ask yourself this question. Would you rather have Michigan be 11-0 with Cade McNamara as the quarterback, and you see a little bit more of what you saw from J.J. McCarthy last year, but you're 11-0 heading into that Ohio State game, but you might feel like McCarthy hasn't had a true shot because he gets in when the games are over, or he just gets a series here or there. You're like, the ceiling is higher with McCarthy as the quarterback. Or, do you like, I don't think anybody would take, well, JJ would be that QB, but Michigan will drop a game along the way because they fooled around with the, a quarterback rotation, but they got McCarthy finally as the starter. And if you would suggest to me that the way McCarthy unseats McNamara, let's take a game like at Iowa, October 1st. Oh, Michigan's going to win those first 4 games. They go to Iowa. That's their second toughest game of the year. Let's just say McNamara doesn't play well in the first half, and he throws a couple picks. Michigan loses that game. Well, yeah, you got a really good chance then they have McCarthy. You don't want it to play out like that. It's hard to unseat an incumbent at quarterback, especially one that won a championship for the team for the first time in almost 20 years. It's going to be hard to do. McCarthy could do it. He could do it even in fall camp, but I don't think there's going to be anywhere close to a split of snaps, even though I would like to see it in the non-conference. I don't think it's going to be anywhere close to a true, it better get somewhere in there, but I don't think I'm already projecting the controversy or me, like everybody else, wondering why they didn't get McCarthy. Like, don't get up, get up on Colorado State by 45-3, but don't only have it be midway through the third quarter and McCarthy has only played 2 snaps at this 45-3, and then he comes in and then he, hands the ball off, and then Mike throw 4 or 5 times, and like, what's that doing? Give him some real snaps. That's what I want. Real snaps. You got to be careful with real snaps. I'm asking me which skill players do I think leave after this year for the 23 draft? Well, I think that Ronnie Bell, Eric All, Cornelius Johnson could do that. Do I think Andrell Anthony, he was a true freshman, so he can't leave. Roman Wilson could. I would say Ronnie Bell's done. And I would say All, I think he's done too. So Kojo, I would make the prediction that he would likely go. Have a good year, rack up a lot of touchdowns, go to the NFL draft. I would hope guys stay. I want them to do what's best for them. But hey, name, image, and likeness, the way Michigan is their plan to really take care of guys. Maybe Cornelius Johnson, even if he has a really good year and you think, 3rd rounder, and Michigan's like, we'll give you $3 million. Maybe he'd stay around for another year. But Corum, running backs should go. Donovan Edwards can't. He was a true freshman. So let me just maybe Kojo, maybe Blake Corum get into the league. Skill positions also involves the quarterback. Both McNamara and McCarthy could stay around for 3 years more if they wanted to. And then after this year, one of the guys could have 2. One of those guys is going to leave, would be my prediction. Me sitting around making a prediction about which one it would be. If you wanted me to do that, I could. So here's the answer. Most likely Corum. The odd man out at quarterback. Well, you're saying NFL. JJ, technically, he is a sophomore. He cannot go to the NFL. He could transfer. So that is an easy way to say, yeah, I think Cade McNamara could. I don't think Cade McNamara is going pro either. That's the interesting thing about name, image, and likeness. Whichever quarterback ends up being the man for Michigan this year and then is coming back next year, that quarterback, let's say for a second, is Cade McNamara, he's going to make bank with name, image, and likeness. I would think that he would get $5 million. At least as we're sitting here talking right now, it's easy for me to just throw the money around, but you look at the going rate but I think I think McNamara could get $5 million. If McCarthy ends up winning the job, if he ends up winning the job, McCarthy could end up, expecting that much as well. But so let's go over it. What skill position players do I expect that are going to, how did you put it? Let's see. Do I think leave? Well, some of them have to because of like Ronnie Bell. They run out of eligibility. I would put my eyes on Kojo and Blake Corum. Those would be the 2 on offense. I don't think even if Cade wins the job, I don't see him going to the pros. He is a skill guy. So I think that answers the question. OJ Jr. on the feedback. He has a Santa emoji. So nice. Santa coming to Michigan has changed everything. Finally, Michigan gets a president that's more than just a stuffed shirt. Yeah, I don't know what an egg here is, or a stuffed shirt. Egghead? I don't know. Was that like a brainiac? Something like that? Yeah, look, Schlissel was not into sports. Santa is. that is exciting from a Michigan standpoint. I am with you there. That is good news. Yeah, you can. Yeah, I'm with you. And that's okay. I'm all right. Yeah, it was good news. We talked a lot about that yesterday. Thanks for joining us. Everybody have themselves a great rest of today. Thanks to Phil Steele for joining us. And join up the Maize and Blue Review today. I want to see anyone on the posting board. Get in there and say, what's up? I'm here from the pod. Especially you guys, OM, OJ. Maybe you guys are already OJ Jr. Maybe you guys are already have joined up. Maybe you're already in there, asking questions and posting threads in all of that. But if you're not, get in there. It's free. And you can see what it's all about. Okay. Until tomorrow, I'll see you at 1 o'clock tomorrow. Again, a little basketball talk tomorrow. Got that for you.